Donc, bonjour à toutes et à tous, je vous souhaite la bienvenue pour cette petite discussion et interview de notre invité. Ça va durer à peu près entre 45 minutes et 1 heure, donc sous forme de questions-réponses. Vous allez avoir un panneau de questions sur lequel vous allez pouvoir poser les questions à notre invité. Et si on a le temps, on espère qu'on aura le temps, on pourra répondre au moins à quelques-unes. Et dans tous les cas, on s'efforcera de répondre à toutes vos questions dans un second temps. Donc, on va pouvoir démarrer. Donc, je vais commencer par me présenter. Je suis Kamel Mouhoubi, je suis le responsable de l'offre cybersécurité réseau chez Miel depuis 26 ans maintenant. Et je m'occupe également des innovations qu'on ajoute régulièrement à notre portfolio. Et alors, on a aujourd'hui un invité très prestigieux. Il va nous expliquer comment la facilité grandissante de propagation des cyberattaquants à l'intérieur des réseaux et puis le besoin critique d'organisations de réduire les chances de succès des cyberattaques l'ont conduit à énoncer un concept qui est devenu ensuite un modèle, à savoir le zéro trust. Alors, on a tous une idée plus ou moins précise de ce que représente le zéro trust, la zéro confiance qui contient normalement, dans ces termes, sa propre définition. L'idée principale, c'est de mettre en place des contrôles pour l'accès aux ressources, aux données, aux applications, aux services, en accordant théoriquement aucune confiance implicite. Et donc, en vérifiant en continu les identités, la légitimité, la forme, le contenu avant d'autoriser cet accès. C'est un concept qui correspond parfaitement à la mission d'Illumio, la compagnie de segmentation Zero Trust dont nous allons parler tout à l'heure. Alors, une autre définition, c'est aussi également de sortir du modèle périmétrique et de segmenter, de découper, de segmenter le réseau en définissant des zones à l'intérieur desquelles l'accès, donc la confiance, n'est accordée que suivant des critères, la validation d'un ensemble de critères stricts bien définis. Là encore, la solution de segmentation Zero Trust Illumio va s'inscrire parfaitement dans cette approche. Et puis, la dernière définition, la plus simple, elle tient en 4 mots en anglais, 6 mots en français. Never trust, always verify. Ne jamais faire confiance, toujours vérifier. On va voir qu'en réalité, l'absence totale de confiance implicite, dans les faits, est impossible. Mais qu'en fait, il s'agit plutôt d'accorder une confiance implicite qui soit la plus petite possible dans l'espace et dans le temps, d'accorder dynamiquement une micro-confiance comme dans une micro-segmentation. Alors cette expression, never trust, always verify, ce concept qui est devenu en fait une vraie stratégie, cette approche s'est imposée comme un standard dans la politique de cybersécurité des organisations. Et cette approche aujourd'hui, elle a été pensée et conçue dès 2009-2010. À cette époque, par un analyste au Forrester, qu'on a la chance et l'honneur d'avoir aujourd'hui avec nous, John Kindervag. Alors, on a l'immense plaisir de l'avoir avec nous. C'est en quelque sorte le père du Zero Trust. Et c'est aussi pour nous, depuis peu, le récent Chief Evangelist d'Illumio. Et depuis donc près de 15 ans, John est le pionnier, le porte-parole de ce mode de pensée, de cette approche innovante de la cybersécurité. Et si aujourd'hui il a rejoint Illumio, on va voir que c'est tout sauf un hasard. Alors, pendant cette discussion, je vais échanger avec John, je vais lui poser quelques questions. On va commencer par ses perspectives en cybersécurité et l'histoire de l'origine du Zero Trust, comme une introduction de lui-même. Puis on va s'intéresser à la raison pour laquelle il a rejoint Illumio. Et puis après, on va s'intéresser à ce que la segmentation Zero Trust nous réserve pour le futur. Alors j'ai assez parlé, je vais m'adresser à John. John, welcome. We are very excited to have you on board, and I will suggest to start immediately with the first question as an introduction of yourself. I will first start in French and then translate it, even though you have some level of French, but I guess. Petit peu. So yes, la plupart des auditeurs qui participent vous connaissent ou ont entendu parler de vous. Mais est-ce que vous pourriez nous parler un petit peu de votre parcours et de la manière dont votre expérience a façonné votre point de vue? So, John, most of the audience knows you, or at least have heard about you. could you please talk about your background and how your experience has shaped your viewpoints, your point of view?
Yeah, I started off in this business as a network engineer and then became a security engineer and architect, pen tester, and did all the jobs, that we call, in the trenches over here in the US. I live in Texas. And so, it's the hands-on experiential things. And eventually I got an offer from Forrester Research and went over to become an analyst and had a lot of freedom to uh, research and write about things. And one of the things that had always bothered me is in the installation of firewalls at the turn of the century, there was a trust model. And the idea was that the internal network had the highest trust level, the external network had the lowest trust level, and you didn't have to write a policy or a firewall rule to move traffic from a high trust level, the internal network, to the low trust level. And I kept trying to write those policies and I kept getting in trouble because they said that's not the way you're supposed to do it. And I said, well, but how are we going to keep people from stealing our data if they get in? And well, no, they won't be able to get in. And I was a pen tester. Yes, I can get in. And so I had a hatred for many years with this thing called the trust model. And when I went to Forrester, I got to research the history of that and spent 2 years doing primary research from 2008 to 2010. And then I wrote the first zero trust report called No More Chewy Centers, introducing the zero trust model of cybersecurity back in September of 2010. And very, very slowly it all took off, and some important people started doing it and telling other people about it, and eventually it got all the way up to the White House, where the President of the United States issued an executive order mandating that all US federal government agencies move towards having zero trust architectures. And that was sort of the pinnacle where it became mainstream, because the president changed the incentive structure and told people it's okay to do zero trust. That was the essential message. Before that, it was the weird people do zero trust, or the people who don't follow the rules of the vendors do zero trust. And so he opened the floodgates, shall we say, of the zero trust movement.
Oh yeah, I see. Interesting. And merci, John. Justement, en parlant de l'architecture Zero Trust, est-ce qu'on peut, on est à un stage relativement tôt ici en France, il y a beaucoup de questions qui se posent sur le concept Zero Trust. Alors, est-ce qu'on peut vraiment considérer que le concept de Zero Trust, c'est de ne jamais faire confiance à rien ni à personne, ou est-ce qu'il s'agit d'autre chose? So, John, talking about the Zero Trust architecture that you mentioned, can you really consider that in this model or this concept, you should never trust anything or anyone in a system, in a digital system, or is the approach different?
No, you never trust, because trust is a human emotion that's been injected into digital systems for no reason. It doesn't actually exist in digital systems. So it's a word that someone chose to use, and it causes a lot of problems because psychologically human beings, are trusting, and we tend to be too trusting. And so when we take that human concept and we apply it to digital systems, it causes us not to be as diligent as we should be. So trust is a bad word in my world. There should be zero trust, right? What we're trying to do is validate a system, or validate a connection using various signals so that we can have confidence, because trust is binary. Either you're trusted or untrusted. You don't have degrees of trust. That never exists. Once you say, well, I kind of don't trust so-and-so, well, then you don't trust so-and-so. You can't not partially trust them. That doesn't work in real life. And so we can have degrees of confidence in a system to allow a connection to take place over the network, but we don't need trust to move a packet. There's no trust flag in TCP, for example. So it's again this human emotion that somebody put into the system for absolutely no reason, and it causes amazing amounts of problems. All data breaches, you could trace them back to an exploitation of the broken trust model. The reason we have things like dwell time, where attackers can hide in our network for days, months, weeks, sometimes even years, is because we have a broken trust model that allowed them to come in. And one of the important thing to understand is if you have a data breach or a significant cybersecurity attack that is successful, it happened because there was a rule that allowed it to take place. All bad things happen inside of an allow rule. And so we make those too big because we're so fearful that we'll stop good traffic, that will allow a lot of bad things to come into our environments. And we have to invert that concept. Occasionally, you're going to stop something that's good. And maybe somebody's going to get mad, but they have to get over it, because this isn't the analog world. This isn't the human world. This is a digital world that plays by different rules. And we're trying to make it play by human rules, and it's not human.
Ok, yeah. Merci John. Alors si on rentre un petit peu plus dans le réseau, dans l'architecture, alors vous allez me corriger si je me trompe, mais bien avant que vous rejoigniez Illumio, vous avez toujours lié la micro-segmentation au zéro trust. Alors est-ce que la micro-segmentation est vraiment au centre du zéro trust, et pourquoi est-ce que ça serait aussi critique? So John, correct me if I'm wrong, but way before you joined Illumio, you always deeply linked micro-segmentation to zero trust. And is it really micro-segmentation at the center of zero trust? And is it critical, or why do you think it is that critical?
Yeah, the second report I ever wrote about zero trust, 2 months after the original one, was called Build Security into Your Network's DNA, the Zero Trust Network Architecture. And in that report, I broke down why things weren't working and how we needed to rebuild networks differently. And I focused on a couple of key components, especially centralized management and segmentation, right? The word micro-segmentation didn't exist yet. That was created later. And quite frankly, segmentation is segmentation, whether it's micro, macro, nano, pico. People keep trying to add these Greek prefixes to it for various reasons, but it's segmentation. And you have to segment away the important things, the protect surface, so that you can protect it. So in that report, all the way back in 2010, November of 2010, I wrote, new ways of segmenting networks must be created because all future networks must be segmented by default. If your network is flat, then you may pay the bills, but it is owned by attackers. When I was a pen tester, I loved flat networks because we could move around, get to anything, and nothing could stop us because there were no controls in place once we penetrated that outer perimeter, that hard, crunchy outside. We got into that soft, chewy center, and man, we could do whatever we wanted. And luckily, we were the good guys being paid to do this. But what really prompted me to write all of this reports and do this research is that no one cared that we were able to get to this stuff. It's good enough. That's the way we've been told to do it by vendor X or vendor Y. And it just was outrageous to me that they were exposing their important data and assets in such a way that an attacker with only a moderate amount of skill could get access to it, steal it, exfiltrate it, and monetize it, either through selling it on the dark web or leveraging the intellectual property they stole for other purposes.
Ok, donc effectivement, la micro-segmentation, ce qu'on appelle maintenant la segmentation zéro trust, va être au cœur des projets Zero Trust. Alors, justement, on va commencer à s'intéresser un petit peu au marché français, même si John ne connaît pas très bien. Alors, certaines entreprises avec lesquelles organisations avec lesquelles on discute ici en France, disent avoir une stratégie, un programme Zero Trust et avoir déployé une architecture Zero Trust. Un peu comme s'il y avait un début et une fin à un projet Zero Trust. Alors, est-ce qu'ils ont tort? Et s'ils ont tort, pourquoi ils auraient tort? So, John, some companies we talk to here in France claim they have a zero trust program or a zero trust project, and that they deployed zero trust architecture as if there was a beginning and an end to a zero trust project. Are they wrong, and what would they be wrong?
Well, zero trust isn't a project. It's a process. It's a lifestyle. It's a journey, right? You're going to have to constantly keep maintaining it and updating it and making it better throughout the life cycle of whatever data or asset that you're protecting. So you can't say we're finished with it, and oh yeah, we're done. You're never done. I mean, it's like life. You're never done with life until you're done. So for as long as you have IT systems, you're going to need to maintain, monitor, and maintain, and that's the fifth step of the 5 steps of zero trust: monitor and maintain. And the exciting thing about that is we're not just looking at stuff, in the old SOC model. We've made it anti-fragile. This is an idea that you can take a system, and we tend to think of systems as fragile or robust. And there's a third kind of system defined by Taleb called an anti-fragile system. And he gave me the vocabulary to talk about this. It's what I've been trying to explain, and I didn't have the language for it. But under load, under stress, the system becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. So you think of the human body, if I go out on vacation and I eat too much and gain some weight, I have to get back in shape. I have to lift weights or run or bike or do something, diet. I have to do something that puts incredible stress on my body. But at the same time, my body gets stronger and stronger through the process of adapting to that stress. And that's what we can do with these zero trust environments. We can get them to automatically, in fact, adapt to that stress and get stronger and stronger over time as we have more telemetry. And so it's something that you're never done with, but it is something that is systemic and creates a loop so that in many ways it automates itself if it's done correctly.
Ok, donc le Zero Trust, c'est plutôt un programme, un process continu en plusieurs étapes qui ne cesse de s'arrêter, qui ne cesse de se terminer en boucle et qui renforce les systèmes pour que les systèmes ne sont pas soit fragiles, soit robustes, mais antifragiles, et que plus le process continue, plus les systèmes se renforcent. Ok, thank you, John. So, alors, on va un petit peu faire la liaison entre aujourd'hui le sujet du Zero Trust et puis Illumio, la solution de segmentation Zero Trust. Alors, vous avez toujours été un défenseur, un évangéliste de la segmentation Zero Trust, comme on vient de l'entendre maintenant, et ça vous fait ça fait de vous une personne idéale chez Illumio. Alors, est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire pourquoi vous avez décidé de rejoindre Illumio et qu'est-ce que vous aimez, qu'est-ce qui vous passionne dans ce rôle? So, yeah, making the link with Illumio, you are a Zero Trust segmentation advocate and evangelist for long now, and that makes, of course, that makes you a very good fit, perfect fit at Illumio. Could you tell us why you decided to join Illumio and what you like or what excites you about your role there?
Yeah, I've known Illumio since they started. I've known the co-founders since they started the company. In fact, I did the first ever analyst advisory that they ever did in the history of their company back in 2013. And I still have that shirt that they gave me at that event. But I reconnected with Andrew Rubin, the co-founder, at another event right as we were coming out of COVID. And we've kept in touch, and the timing was right for him to need me, and the timing was right for me to want to take on another challenge. And what I love about Illumio is it's really the only segmentation platform that can handle protect surfaces. You know, what are you going to protect? That's step one. In the three places where we could put them, you know, in this world of IT we live in, which are endpoints on networks, you know, data centers, and then in public clouds. And it can do it with a single management console, so that you have the same policy construct across all of those things. And it just makes it easier to manage. And so we're reducing the complexity of the management. And since I understand that really the base of zero trust, if you're doing segmentation correctly, you can then consume things like identity and all these other pillars that people talk about inside the policy, but the segmentation controls the access, the policy statement. Zero trust comes down to policy statements, and they have to be very granular, and they have to be allow only rules, because remember, all bad things happen inside of the allow rule. So if there's a data breach at your organization, you contributed to it by having a rule that allowed it. You're not just a victim. It's sad to say, you're not just a victim. You're also a co-conspirator in a way, because you had bad rules and bad policies. And so these are the things that I wanted to come across. And so Illumio gives me the opportunity to get a huge jump start on building these zero trust environments at a very high value and ease of deployment. It's all software, it's not hardware. It doesn't take a long time. It's intuitive to manage, and you know, it just seemed like the perfect fit for me.
OK. Yeah, it's perfectly clear. Merci, c'est très très clair. Mais justement, quand on discute avec de projets et de déploiement de solutions comme Illumio, avec des organisations, les clients comprennent que la segmentation Zero Trust demande des efforts, du temps, de l'argent, et une question qui est inévitable, quel que soit le projet d'ailleurs, mais elle est toujours simple: c'est quoi mon retour sur investissement sur la micro-segmentation? Quelle valeur je vais retirer de l'investissement dans ce domaine? So, anywhere in the world, zero trust segmentation is requiring efforts, time, and some money as well. So the question we always have from customers is quite simple. Is there a real ROI in micro-segmentation? What value can you going to get from investment in zero trust segmentation?
Well, because it's the first step in protecting something, right? The reason we do cybersecurity is that we are protecting something. That something is known as a DAS element, stands for data, applications, assets, or services. Those are the four things that generally have value and we can protect. And so a lot of people just think you're doing cybersecurity to do cybersecurity. It's a thing that needs to be done. But no, there's a real reason behind it. And quite frankly, the industry changed and became worse when we went from being information security to cybersecurity. Everybody wanted to sound cool, but what's a cyber and why should you secure it? That's you can't answer that question because there's no such thing as a cyber. So now we need to think about what we're protecting. And the first step in protecting something is to segment it away from all the other things. I mean, you do that in real life, right? You put your important stuff in a separate room and lock the door. It's the same things that you would do all the time. And so what you do is you figure out what's most important, and then segment that away from everything else, put controls around it, and now that thing is protected so that it's less likely to be attacked successfully. You know, zero trust does two things. One is it stops data breaches, which are the exfiltration of sensitive or regulated data from your networks and systems into the hands of a malicious actor. That's how it's defined by GDPR, for example, CCPA, PCI, all the regulatory things. The breach isn't coming in, it's taking things out. So we want to stop things from going out. And the second thing zero trust does is it stops cyber attacks from being successful. We can never stop the attack from starting because only the attacker can do that. And the only thing that keeps an attacker from attacking you is their will to attack you. There's no other thing that's stopping them. And so, but we can make those cyber attacks unsuccessful. And that's the second goal of Zero Trust. And so when we look at it from a mission perspective or a high level objective or strategic objective, that's why Zero Trust is resonating around the world with leaders. I mean, it resonates in boardrooms. It resonates with presidents and prime ministers and generals and admirals and all kinds of people, the highest levels of any organization. Sometimes I struggle to get, security engineers and architects to adopt it because that's not the way they've always done things. But the way we're doing things now, or the way we've always done things in the past, haven't worked. And we need to rethink it in order to achieve our goal of actually protecting something. Otherwise, we should all be in a different business.
OK. Thank you. Effectivement, dans le cadre d'un process Zero Trust, compte tenu des dégâts causés par les cyberattaques et de la nécessité de les contenir, ils comprennent effectivement relativement rapidement l'intérêt de cet investissement. Mais une autre objection qu'on a de la part des sociétés avec lesquelles on peut éventuellement discuter, qui est compréhensible, concernant la micro-segmentation, la segmentation 013, c'est l'apparente ou l'éventuelle complexité opérationnelle. Le fait que ce type de projet pourrait réellement perturber la production en bloquant les flux critiques. Alors, John, qu'est-ce que vous répondriez à ces organisations qui rencontrent des difficultés pour construire un programme qui soit efficace et pas forcément perturbateur? So, John, another objections we have sometimes from organizations concerning zero trust segmentation or micro-segmentation is an operational complexity and the fact that it could really disturb the production by blocking critical flows, for example. What would you answer to those companies who face difficulties to build a real efficient program?
I don't see those difficulties actually existing in the real world. They're hypothetical things that people pull out of the air to avoid actually doing the real work of cybersecurity. And so I think they're just convenient excuses not to do their job. We don't see in real life big production disruptions. When you do it in the correct way, one protect surface at a time, the most you can disrupt is one protect surface. So it's highly non-disruptive and it doesn't affect user experience. Users don't know they're on zero trust environments unless they're trying to do something bad, and then they can't get to a resource and then they quit trying to do the bad things. So it changes their incentives because a lot of people will do bad things because they're allowed to do bad things because of the trust model. Snowden and Manning are great examples of that. And so, I see people trying to avoid doing extra work is what I see. And zero trust is very simple. It's not complex at all, but a lot of people either hear it from the wrong people, they listen to certain vendors or whatever, or they just don't want to do it, right? And it's because they don't want to do anything new. They don't want to make an effort to actually secure something. They don't have the proper mission focus and they don't have the proper set of incentives in their organization. And so left on their own accord, a lot of people won't do it right, which is why I try to get to CEOs and presidents and board members and generals and admirals, because if somebody is told to do it and their incentive structure is changed, then they'll do it and find out that it's actually easy to do and makes their job more secure. So it's a struggle that I've seen for the last 14 years for sure, but it's easily overcome through the through realignment of incentives inside the organization. It's really a leadership problem, not a technology problem.
Okay, yeah, pretty clear. So, on a vu à peu près la réponse à l'objection de retour sur investissement, à l'éventuelle complexité opérationnelle qui n'est pas justifiée car le genre vaut largement la chandelle, et si on considère qu'une approche zéro trust est nécessaire, ça devient en fait un impératif. Mais justement, vu l'adoption des programmes ou des process zéro trust grandissantes, comment est-ce que, John, vous voyez l'avenir de la micro-segmentation, de la segmentation zéro trust? So it was a bit long in French, but I will make it short in English. How do you see the future of zero trust segmentation, of micro-segmentation?
Well, I mean, zero trust and micro-segmentation are inextricably linked as part of the same journey. Zero trust is the strategy, and micro-segmentation is a tactic that we use. So the strategy isn't going to change, and it's going to continue to grow and grow and grow and be adopted by more and more organizations. And then the micro-segmentation technology, especially what we're building, is going to get better and better and better over time. And so I think the future is very bright. I think we can actually win the cyber war using zero trust. That's why I talk about that all the time. And I know a lot of things that I can't talk about that demonstrate that success. So I'm very bullish on it. It's become a global movement. I travel all over the world. You know, I'm fixing to go. Fixing is a there's another language in the U.S. called Texan. And so that's a Texan word. It means I'm about to do something. So I'm fixing to go to Stockholm and Zurich next week to talk about it. And then I'll come back for a week and I'll go to Japan and Taiwan. So it's a global movement and people want to hear more about it. They want to do it because they need to protect their sensitive data and assets. It's just an imperative in the modern world. And when you see these big data breaches, ransomware attacks, infrastructure attacks that are successful, I mean, you know, it's so important to get your cybersecurity world in order and to quit letting it languish and to quit underfunding it. It's the most important thing probably in your organization, because if your computational systems don't work, if your network is down, your business is gone, right? We saw this with a healthcare organization in the US where they had a ransomware attack. They were locked out of their own data and people couldn't get prescriptions. Doctors couldn't get paid. It was a horrible thing. And that's going to happen more and more because the attackers are so sophisticated and they're focused on the thing that you're not focused on. And so you have to, you have to change your opinion about cybersecurity and realize that it is a business imperative. It is not a cost center. And don't look at it as just a raw capital expenditure. It is the lifeblood of your business. You know, you take your blood pressure, you get your blood tested because you know that if you run out of blood or something stops your blood, you die of a heart attack. Well, that's your circulatory system is exactly your network, except it's also your nervous system. It's all the systems inside of your body. If they quit working, you die. Same with your network and your computational systems and your data processing systems. If they quit working, your organization dies. And so you have to take that stuff seriously.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pretty clear. We're coming to the end of the questions I prepared. We'll have a look to see if we have some questions from the audience. So just question that comes sometimes is in the different ways that micro-segmentation can be done. It's true that even on my side, on our side, we made some companies, some organizations who try to do micro-segmentation with, I would say, standard way, with network-based approach or with deploying firewalls. Is there can you do? Is there a better way to make micro-segmentation, or is all those approaches? Is there a difference between all those approaches?
Well, I mean, it's going to be dependent somewhat on the thing you're trying to protect, right? So, there are times when you need various things. And so every zero trust environment is custom made for the protect surface that you're protecting. And sometimes, a micro-segmentation solution like Illumio is perfect, but there's going to be times when it's not. And we're not saying we're the be all end all of zero trust. And then if you get our technology, you'll be all zero trusty. You won't. It is part of the journey and is one of the technologies that can uplift your zero trust journey pretty significantly in many, many, many instances. So that's an important thing to understand is what are you protecting and why are you doing this? And if you don't understand that, then you're not going to be very successful. It's not just about buying technologies anymore. It's about doing much more than that.
Okay. Also, these that I'm trying to translate them in English. So yeah, the host-based segmentation as Illumio is sometimes seen as a harder way or to deploy such a solution, because adding an agent is always seen as an obstacle. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons that I came to Illumio, is because we don't really have an agent. We have an application. So there's two spaces computationally. There's kernel space and user space. And an agent runs in kernel space. It's embedded in the kernel, and it is said to have agency over the kernel. That's where we get the term agent. Illumio functions as an application in user space, just like we're using GoToMeeting. That's an application. Our virtual enforcement node technology is an application that then talks to the kernel via computational calls, but it doesn't reside in the kernel. So, for example, one of the things that to get rid of that conception is I talk to people about how you don't have to you don't have to restart a server if you deploy Illumio. And I think that that's a huge thing that people don't really understand. And so, plus, just doing stuff on the host gives us access to things that you can't get otherwise. Now, for example, in the cloud, we can use APIs, but in a host, you can't. So you're going to be dependent upon the technology that exists, and you're happy to deploy host-based controls for other things that are much more damaging than a segmentation host, or potentially damaging, that disrupt the kernel. And so that's one of the things that intrigued me about coming to Illumio, is the fact that we didn't disrupt the kernel. We weren't sitting as, what is colloquially called a shim of the kernel.
Okay, so and yeah, and last questions, a good one, I think. You started talking about zero trust and segmentation 15 years ago, and almost 15 years ago, and now it sounds like we are just at the beginning of the journey. Why does it take so long?
Well, I don't know that it does. I think that's what you can see, right? I mean, if if you look at an iceberg, it looks small, but it's big underneath the ocean, right? And same is true of zero trust. What you can see is small, but underneath it is this massive, iceberg of stuff that's happening that no one's ever going to talk to you about, right? But there's a reason President Biden issued an executive order. That wasn't just like, hey, that sounds like a cool term, I'm going to create an executive order. There were lots of things going on behind the scenes for years that drove that. So I don't think that it's, you know, it's just when you as an individual get exposed to it, you think it starts there, but it
Yeah, I see
didn't,
it.
you know. So it's been around for a long time. It's been done by big organizations for a long time. They just weren't publicizing it. So we used to joke that zero trust was like the movie Fight Club. If you've ever seen the movie Fight Club, you
I
know the
know.
first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club, and that's what happened with zero trust. You didn't talk about it, and what President Biden did is he gave everybody permission to talk about it.
I see
So
it.
that set off, you know, that was great from an awareness standpoint, and I'm grateful for that.
Okay. So, John, I would like to thank you very much for this time you spent with us. It was, I think, a fruitful discussion, and it had all our attendees. So, thank you very much. I hope I meet you at RSA conference then in San Francisco.
Ah, we
And
will.
yeah, for sure. So, thank you very much. Merci à toutes et à tous d'avoir participé à cette petite discussion avec John. On le remercie chaleureusement. Il est très sollicité un peu partout dans le monde, donc c'est très gentil à lui d'avoir participé. Je vous remercie à tous. Thank you, John. See you soon. Bye bye. Merci
Bye.
à tous. Au revoir.